Okay, so I'd like you to turn with me, please, to Genesis and chapter 26. It's been very interesting for me. I have preached through these passages before, but not in so much detail. So today we're going to take a look at chapter 26. It says, "And there was a famine in the land beside the first famine that was in the days of Abraham. And Isaac went unto Abimelech, king of the Philistines, unto Gerar." Now, when we talk about the king of the Philistines and Gerar, it really was Gaza that linked to Egypt. So it was referred to as Egypt in some places, but in other places it's just called Gerar. And Abimelech is not a personal name, it's a title. It's a bit like your majesty, you see. So Isaac went to the king of the Philistines unto Gerar. Now, one of the things that we need to understand as Christians, we're not Abraham and we're not Isaac, but we are Christians, is that sometimes things like this might happen to us. I'm not suggesting that we're going to be having a famine next, although there could be quite a shortage of some foodstuffs as a result of world politics at the moment. But this is a test, and a test for Isaac. And it's the same test that Abraham had. The question is this: what will he do? What will he do? And may I suggest that as Christians, there are times in our lives when we're faced with tests. And it's not just a test in life like everybody would have. This one is a test from the Lord for Isaac. It's a test to see whether he will stay in the land or whether he will go down to where the Philistines are because they're hungry. The Lord promised that he would lead Abraham and all his children, and he promised to provide for them for all that they needed. So were they going to trust in God, or were they going to just go down to Philistines to be fed? The Philistines and Egypt are always referred to in Scripture as a symbolic or typologically significant in relation to the world. Okay? So in your life, when you struggle or when you have difficulties, are you going to go straight down the corner of the street and speak to unbelievers? Or are you going to rely upon the Lord to help you? And this, for my wife and I, was a great challenge many, many years ago when we worked in full-time Christian service, in which we were supported entirely by the offerings of the Lord's people, as much as they ever provided. And so that's the question, really. The question is, what are we going to do when the crisis hits? So verse 2, "And the Lord appeared unto Isaac and said, Go not down into Egypt. Dwell in the land where I shall tell thee of. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with thee and will bless thee. For unto thee and unto thy seed I will give all these countries, and I will perform the oath which I swear unto Abraham thy father, and I will make thy seed to multiply as the stars of heaven, and will give unto thy seed all these countries, and in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed." And why did this promise come to Isaac? Because, verse 5, "Abraham obeyed my voice." Now notice what else it says. "He kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws." Now we tend to think of the life of Abraham as being a life of faith and promise, and that's true. But what we fail to realize is that Abraham was not just in a sort of a nebulous experience of just promise. He lived according to the commandments of the Lord and the statutes of the Lord and the laws of the Lord and the charge of the Lord. The Lord had put him where he was, and he was to stay there, wasn't to move about. And that same is true for us Christians. When the Lord puts us in a particular place, and we know when God puts us in a particular place for all sorts of reasons, but when God puts us in a place where he wants us to be, we're to stay there. We're to keep his charge there, and we are to keep his commandments and statutes and laws. Okay. Verse 6. And Isaac dwelt in Gerar, and the men of that place asked him of his wife, and he said, she's my sister, for he feared to say that she is my wife, lest, said he, the men of the place should kill me for Rebekah, because she was fair to look upon. Let me just say something. Having a beautiful wife is a wonderful thing, okay? Because, after all, you've got to look at her for a long time. So you might as well look at somebody that's beautiful. But the only problem with that is that there are other issues that come alongside with that. And in this particular case, she was so beautiful that Isaac was actually afraid of the men that were the Philistines, because he knew what their character was. If they could kill Isaac, then she would then be free for them to marry her. Okay? Verse 8, and it came to pass that when he'd been there a long time, that Abimelech, king of the Philistines, looked out of his window and saw, and behold, Isaac was sporting with Rebekah, his wife. Now, what that means is they were playing. Maybe they were chasing each other or whatever it is they were doing, but they were just having fun together, as a man and a wife does in the privacy of their own lives. And he suddenly realized, hang on a minute, Rebekah is his wife. And Abimelech called Isaac and said, behold, of a surety, she is thy wife. How saidst thou, she is my sister? And Isaac said, because I said, lest I die for her. Okay, that's very brave of him, isn't it? And Abimelech said, what is this that thou hast done unto us? One of the people might lightly have lain with thy wife, and thou shouldest have brought guiltiness upon us. And Abimelech charged all his people, saying, he that toucheth this man or his wife shall surely be put to death. Now, I don't know whether you noticed this, but isn't this a carbon copy of what his father Abraham did? It's exactly the same, with exactly the same people and exactly the same excuse. And it was an utter disaster, wasn't it? And so what we've got to remember is this, is that in life, sometimes our children will do exactly the same mistakes that we do. And when you think about your father or your mother, or you think about people, your grandfather, it's very important that us children learn from what our fathers and mothers did and not make the same mistakes. Because as a friend of mine said, a wise person learns from other people's mistakes. And you children have had an opportunity in your life to see the life of your mother and father and to learn from it. And if they made mistakes, to learn that you don't need to go the same way. You don't need to go down the same path. You actually can do a better thing and you can learn better things. Verse 12. Then Isaac sowed in that land and received in the same year 100-fold. The Lord blessed him. And the man waxed great and went forward and grew until he became very great. For he had possession of flocks and possession of herds and great store of servants. And the Philistines envied him. For all the wells which his father's servants had digged in the days of Abraham his father, and the Philistines had stopped them up and filled them with earth. That's not nice, is it? Can you imagine the Philistines are always viewed in history as being, well, they're just like the Philistines. You know what a Philistine is? Someone that just does the wrong thing. You know what that is? Now, a well in the Middle East is a very precious thing. So precious, in fact, that people used to fight over wells and fight over territory surrounding wells. But the Philistines, being Philistines, they just filled them with water, filled them with sand, or filled them with soil. Yeah, terrible thing to do. One of the things that you need to remember about the four patriarchs, I wonder whether you can remember this for next time when I come here, is Abraham built 4 altars in his lifetime. Isaac had 4 wells dug in his lifetime. It's his servants that did the work. And Jacob had 4 pillars which he set up to worship the Lord. And Joseph, we'll see that one day in the future, God willing, he had 4 coats. He had the coat that his father gave him, which was covered in blood. He had the coat of a servant. He had the coat of a servant, okay, which he went to prison with. When he came out of prison and went into Potiphar's house, he had a coat which was left in the hand of Potiphar's wife because she wanted to sexually assault him effectively, and he left his coat with her. And then he finally had a coat which was the coat of glory made of gold, which he used for when he was basically the commander of the whole of Egypt. So he had 4 coats, but each of the patriarchs had 4 of each. So what was Abraham then? Abraham had what? 4 altars. Okay. What did Isaac have? 4 wells. And what did Jacob have? 4 pillars. What did Joseph have? 4 coats. It's easy to remember, isn't it, when you think of it like that? It also helps us to remember, you could search in your Bible and find out all these 4s. And when you find these 4s, you'll discover that it outlines the whole of their lives. Okay, just like the 4 coats of Joseph. When we remember what they are, it helps us to remember the whole of his life story. So, and Abimelech, verse 16, said unto Isaac, go from us, for thou art much mightier than we. So one of the problems that Abraham had, which is now going to come out in the life of Isaac, funny how father to son inherit these issues and copy these issues, is that when Abraham went down into Egypt, he became exceptionally wealthy. And that caused great problems, because within great wealth is great trouble. And how many families have got a lot of wealth or a bit of wealth? And what happens at the end? They all fall out over it. You know, old granny dies, and finally the whole family turn up. They couldn't spare some time to visit her, but they all turn up to empty the larder. And they all turn up to empty the coal scuttle, take the coal, it's valuable. And they all turn up to take the furniture, you see. And this is where troubles start. They can come because of great wealth. So don't pray for great wealth. Don't struggle for great wealth. Don't go for the lottery, if I might say. Lottery is something that breaks families because people are unable to behave themselves well when somebody amongst them has got wealth. Is that right? Absolutely. Verse 17, and Isaac departed thence and pitched his tent in the valley of Gerar and dwelt there. And this is where Isaac digged again the wells of water. He digged them again. This is the reopening of the wells, which they had digged in the days of Abraham his father, for the Philistines had stopped them after the death of Abraham. And he called their names by the names which his father had called them. And Isaac's servants dug up the valley and found there a well of springing water. This is a particular type of water. It's mineral water. It's full of life-giving properties for man and for beast. Anybody that went to that springing water would become very well very quickly, and the crops would become, the animals would become very well, and also anything planted would become exceptionally well fertilized. So it's amazing. Verse 20, and the herdsmen of Gerar did strive with Isaac's herdsmen, saying, the water is ours, and we call the name of the well Esk, because they strove with them. And they digged another well, and they strove with them about that too, and they called the name of it Sidnah. And he removed from thence and digged another well, for that they strove not, and he called the name of it Rehoboth. And he said, for now the Lord has made room for us, and we shall be fruitful in the land. So you see, sometimes in families or between families, if it's Isaac and other people's families, that is struggling. And the struggling is down to the wealth that you have or the resources that you have. Okay? And so in the life of Isaac, there was a tremendous amount of struggle. It wasn't Isaac's fault, but there was a lot of struggle there over the wealth of the home. And we know, don't we, people in foreign countries who come to this country, and there's a tremendous struggle over the resources of the family. Verse 23, and he went up from thence to Beersheba. Verse 24, and the Lord appeared unto him the same night and said, I am the God of Abraham thy father, fear not, for I am with thee, and will bless thee, and multiply thy seed for my servant Abraham's sake. And he builded an altar there, and called upon the name of the Lord, and pitched his tent there, and there Isaac's servants digged a well. See, the thing is, you see, with Isaac, is whenever he moved, he always dug a well. He always dug with his servants a well that would provide the life-giving sustenance for the whole family. And so I think it is true, a true thing to say that we need to pray for people, Christians, because wherever they go to, whatever job they seek, whatever employment they seek, or whatever source of income they seek, that income is very important for the whole family, because through that wealth, they're going to be sustained and kept in bodily health. So there we are. Isn't it amazing how in families, what happens to the father of the family is an example to all the children, and they see it working for good or for bad, and they will copy it, because it's all they've ever known. So this is why for fathers, it's so important, and mothers, that your life is an example to your little ones, because they're watching you and they are copying your life exactly as you do it. As I told a story a long time ago here, I'll tell it again, of a man who on a Saturday night, he left the house, put his big coat on, left the house. It was snowing hard. And he went out. He was off out to a place of ill repute. We don't quite know where that was. But he went through the streets, and it was snowing hard, and it was dark. He should have been at home with his wife and family, really, but he was off in his selfish life, and off he went into the darkness. And just as he got near to where he wanted to go, he heard something behind him, and he turned around, and there was his little daughter, standing there with a nightie on in the snow. And he said, my dear, what are you doing here? Oh, she said, Daddy, I just put my feet in your footsteps. Now, the question is this, is that your family are following you. The question is, where are you leading them? Do you see that now? Because wherever you lead them in life, they see it and they follow you. This is why it's so important for fathers and mothers to be a good example. You know, that they follow you to your place of worship, that they follow you in your employment. Where do they follow you? How do they follow you? Talk to them about it. Ask them about whether you've been an example to them in their life. And then if you find that it's not a good example, then change and be a better example. Isaac at this time was never able to speak to Abraham. Abraham is now long dead, but he still had all of the life of Abraham in him. He'd seen it. He'd watched it. He'd watched Sarah be slighted by Abraham, his mother, by Abraham, his father. He'd watched all that. He'd seen the tensions in the home. He'd seen the anger between them. He'd seen the love between them, but he'd also seen the other side as well. And I have to testify that my mother and father were Christians. Great, wonderful thing to have Christian parents. They take you to church on Sunday. It's great. But that doesn't mean to say everything was all perfect. Far from it. Why would it be all perfect? No, there was tensions in the family too. There was arguments in the family. Sometimes things would break down completely in the family. But we see it all. And the children see it all. And the very little ones are very traumatized sometimes by what they see in Christian homes. So then the Lord continues the story. Verse 26, then Abimelech went up from Gerar, and Ahushath, one of his friends, and Phicol, the chief captain of his army. And Isaac said unto them, wherefore came ye to me, seeing you hate me, and have sent me away from you? You see, Isaac was very straight with them. He said, look, you hate me, and so you've banned me. You've sent me to go away. Okay? It hadn't gone well, had it? It hadn't gone well for Isaac. And they said, we saw certainly that the Lord was with thee. And we said, let us be now an oath between us, even betwixt us and thee, and let us make a covenant with thee, that thou wilt not hurt us. Oh, right. So Isaac was so strong and powerful militarily and economically that they were afraid of him. So they said, will you make a covenant that you won't hurt us? We haven't touched you, have we? And as we have done unto you, nothing but good, and have sent you away in peace. Thou art now the blessed of the Lord. And he shall make, and he made them a feast, and they did eat and drink, and they rose up before times in the morning, and they sware with one another. And Isaac sent them away, and they departed from him in peace. Now, the question you've got to ask is, who is the most important person in the story? Well, when you talk about Abraham, you'll notice that with Abraham, the old man of God of the desert, it says at the end, it says he stood up and dismissed the king. You don't dismiss a king, by the way. If ever you need to meet the king, remember, it isn't your job to dismiss the king. He dismisses you, because the one who does the dismissing is the most important of the two. But in this particular case, like with Abraham, he dismissed the king and left. But he dismissed the king after they had promised to enter into this pact, this non-aggression pact between them. And this, of course, this whole story is reminiscent of Israel in the future that will make a non-aggression pact with all the nations round about that want to destroy them. And they will enter into that contract. And for 3.5 years, they'll all keep it until eventually the Antichrist will turn the tables, and he'll come back into Israel, and he will desecrate Israel and desecrate their new temple. And verse 32, and it came to pass the same day that Isaac's servants came and told him concerning the well which they had digged, and they said, we have found water. And he called it Sheba. Therefore the name of the city is called Beersheba unto this day. And Beersheba was going to be one of the central places for Israel in the Holy Land. It was going to be their go-to place. It was the place where God appeared to Isaac. But it was also known to his father Abraham, and it will be known to Jacob, and so on. It's very interesting that in families there are certain locations for specific worship. It's very interesting that. You know, when I visit people from time to time, I visit ministers, I visit all sorts of people, and I like to ask them, where is your place of worship? And they say, oh, we go to the church. And I said, no, I'm talking about in the home. Where's your place of worship? In the home. You see, if you would have this, I remember going to the house of somebody that was one of my teachers one day, and they'd taken something that I made in my college work, and without my permission, they took it to their house and they made a bar where they could serve drinks, because that was their culture, to have a drinking family. So that bar in the home was the center of their lives. The question is this: in your home, where is the place of worship? Where's the place where you come together to pray? And that becomes in the home a little sacred place. I don't mean that the place itself is sacred, that God is physically present. It's just that that's the place where the worship happens. That's the place where the scriptures are read. And so this is something to really think about in our lives. If people who are drinkers can have a bar in their home, then why can't Christians have a reading desk and a place for prayer? Why? Verse 34. And Esau, I keep seeing Isaac every time I see the passage. And Esau was 40 years old when he took Judith, the daughter of Berai the Hittite, and Bashmath, the daughter of Elon the Hittite, which was a grief of mind unto Isaac and to Rebekah. Let me just say something here. It was a grief of mind to Isaac and Rebekah that Esau, their son, the oldest son, should take wives. In fact, it was a grief to them that he took two, of course. But the main thing is, it was a grief to them, the type of people that he took to wife. This is really important. And if you're a father and you have a daughter, or you have a son, pray about the whole issue, that they find the right person, that they find the right person of a godly culture, ideally a believer, the same as they might be. And for Isaac and Rebekah, it says it gave them grief of mind. Grief of mind. It was almost like a sort of a bereavement, because the son that they invested so much love in went off and had an unwise and an ill-advised family life. One was called Judith, the other one was called Bashmath. And what we notice in the life of Esau is this, is that he just wanted his own way, and he wanted to go his own way. He didn't care what Isaac thought. He didn't really care what Rebekah thought. Otherwise, he may not have ever taken that course of action. But the important thing is this, is that we need to pray. And I'm sure that Isaac and Rebekah prayed a great deal, that Isaac would find somebody beautiful, yes, but he would find somebody that was of the same character as themselves. They wanted Isaac to have a godly home. Esau to have a godly home. That was going to be a difficult thing for Esau, because Esau was not godly whatsoever. He didn't worship the God of Abraham, and he just I don't know what he did. He worshipped himself, and he was a thoroughly bad guy. And he took a relationship with two women, which just brought so much grief and torment into the life of his parents. It's very sad, isn't it? And when we read passages like this, what we discover is that this is real life. I was saying to Ruth on the way, we could call this a family service here today, because the subject is all about family. It's all about, in the beginning of the passage, it was all about the wealth and the resources of the family. But now we see that it's all about the relationships that the family will eventually. And this is our prayers for each one of you, is that in your family, the children, and it's not too early to pray for the little ones. Pray that in the early part of your life, that they'll be able to learn from you the principles of Christian living, so that you might be able to pass that on to them. And pray for them, especially at that time when they are young adults, when they're going out there and they're finding their own way in life. Make sure that you pray that it's the way of God that's being instilled into their life, not just because it's convenient for you, but because it will be a blessing for them. So may the Lord bless his word to each one of us. Amen.